It's really good to be here. Glad we are all able to make time to come together and be here. So you talked about growth in Dallas. It was growing. I've been there for 5 years. I've seen it growing. With growth comes traffic. So I was driving out of my home today morning and I was thinking about the blind spots in AI when I was about to hit a blind spot when I swerved right. And thanks, I have a modern car. It kind of helped me stop it. Make sure that I don't do it. Give me a buzz on the steering wheel. So I was safe. So that's what we probably need for blind spots. The reason the session starts with blind spots, I think, is because it's so important for us to know. We already are convinced of the function. We have seen use ChatGPT. We know it works. What we probably need to know to make it enterprise ready is that it works consistently. It works in a way that it is predictable, and it doesn't have any weak or blind spots. That's what we specialize in. I work for a large financial services company which also deals with mortgages. I don't want to put names here, but essentially what we do is making sure it delivers what it promises to deliver. That's the function of the central AI thing here. And I'm glad I don't have to have all answers because my esteemed panelists here have all the answers, and I just need to ask a few questions. So let me get started. So maybe I can start with you, Leader. So what are most significant applications of Gen AI you see today? And maybe we could go around after.
Yeah. So good morning, everyone. When we talk about Gen AI, everyone gets excited, and same thing, we also got excited last year when it was just firing up, and we started some initial pilots with use cases around, productivity, co-pilot, customer service, right? What improvements we can drive, and by this time of the year, I would say, the technology looks very promising, and our take on it is it can still be an assistant, wherever there is assistance to the business outcomes or decision making. The technology works, summarization or, capturing all your knowledge and building some analysis out of it. So we found it pretty promising. Whenever there is decision making, that's where we really need to make sure we are watching out for these blind spots with this technology.
Do you want to take Michael from there and focus on what are the some of these got excited and they became practical as well, maybe in your field? So
Sure. So I'm Michael Paris. I'm in the healthcare side of things. The interesting piece that we looked at from Gen AI piece is first ambient listening. How many of you guys have been in a doctor's office and they spend 90% of their time in front of a computer? You don't feel like the doctor's actually looking at you, talking to you, or anything else. The ambient listening piece, they turn on their cell phone, they ask you, can we record? And that takes in all the information that you're talking back and forth with the doctor and then summarizes the notes. Now, you might think, oh, well, that seems like that's a pretty simple application. Per doctor in a primary care office, that saved on average about an hour and a half to 2 hours per doc in Epic typing at the end of the night. That is name anybody. Raise your hand if you don't want to take 20% of your work away on your job. Okay. Didn't think there was anybody out there from that perspective. Now, it's different for us because we really need to make sure there's no blind spots when it comes into healthcare. So most of our applications are really putting humans in the loop. So while it summarizes it, the doctor has to read through it, but even if it's reading through it, that saves a huge amount of time for the doctor than typing out their entire note. The other piece is, how many of you guys now email your doctor's office? Quite a few. Do you realize that functionality was added in the last 5 years and there's no reimbursement for it? So you just added a whole function and then got no money back for doing that. And by the way, these doctors are already overworked, their staff's already overworked. And so one of the things we have put in is being able to read your email, generate a message back to you, and then once again put the human in the loop to make certain the message actually makes sense. The most interesting part that I actually found about it is patient experience on email actually went up because the doctor or the MA, when they're responding, they're very quick, they're writing out what they need to. Whereas the generative AIs takes its time, explains what's happening, how it is a lot more empathetic. And that's a big deal for the patient because they're like, oh, they took the time to talk to me. We didn't, but the point is you got that feeling. So pretty good areas to gain some business.
Great application. Who doesn't want 20% up? But let's see how many blind spots are in there. So with you, Chetan, can you take the discussion to the next level? What are your applications? What have you seen become practical?
Hi, good morning everyone. Chetan from Polestar. We are a data analytics firm. So in our organization, the way we are seeing it implemented for our clients, there are two major areas. One is where there is a lot of unstructured data, documents, agreements, contracts, resume. So departments like procurement, legal, HR, where you want to blend that information along with structured data and come up with some insights. Conventional NLP has got its limitation. The time to market is much longer. The training that is required is significantly more. That is one area where we are seeing a lot of application. Second is making sense of data. Once you have seen, now we'll have to admit that despite all this self-service and all, most of the end consumers of data, they are not data literate. When I say data literate, there are three levels of, or I would say there are multiple levels of analyzing the data. One is if I give you month-wise data, and if I ask someone that what is the month-wise data, everyone would be able to say January, this is the February, this is the case. That is not data literate. Second is someone would be able to say Q4 contributed 70% of my data. That is level 2. That is still something which is someone with slightly evolved sense of charts and graphs and data, knack of data would be able to do that. The real sense would come when you are able to kind of correlate seemingly unrelated set of data and come up with insights, which is the third level. Now that is something which is mostly missing in most of the user community, user group, and that is something where generative AI, a lot of application is being tried. The reason I'm saying it's tried because we are still not there. So if you talk about say Copilot is supposed to do that, and it would eventually reach there. But if you see out of the box and the kind of insight those would come is something that you would be able to figure out in maybe in 15 to 30 seconds. But eventually with the development in this field, and secondly with the defined areas. So for example, you would see a lot of work on small language models where function specific, industry specific solutions would come, which will start coming up with insights. Those discussions are happening a lot. So these two areas where I've seen from an analytics standpoint.
So you're seeing data, information, knowledge, wisdom, kind of going in. So great insights. Thank you. So Kamlesh,
Yeah.
right?
So I'll add maybe a couple of areas. I think one area where we have seen generative AI really helping is on the data engineering side, on the applications such as code generation, code conversion, even inferring data quality rules, being able to monitor your data pipeline, suggest changes, cost optimization. I think it's emerging as a big area. The other one that we are seeing is the autonomous agents, where say an AI system, a collection of different types of agents, really breaking down and performing the complex tasks quite effectively. So that's another application that we are seeing primarily from a process standpoint where we can apply it to say IBP or financial planning or some of those business processes. So there's a good opportunity to transform with the help of generative AI.
That's excellent. We have a mix here. So we have a consumer-facing application with you where the customer can feel the impact. There is under the iceberg things that are happening in the data engineering where it is now not visible but making a tremendous change. But all of this is actually based on how dollars are flowing in, right? So how are your executives making those choices on where the dollars are flowing? Are they excited with the, let's just get it to the customer? What are they thinking?
Yeah, I think it is, CEO and my executive committee often discuss, right, what's AI, how are we planning to use it, and when it comes to business case, right, how much dollars we should put in. So we are still following the same, we don't get like, here is a couple of $1 million and do whatever you want, right? I mean, we don't have that luxury. We still need to produce the business case, and so far, we have seen the business cases around user productivity, right? How much time it can save for business users. And I would love to see if we can translate even further where we can accelerate sales or improve customer service. Those are like tangible outcomes that my business team looks for. So it's yet to reach there, but yeah, we cannot get a pass on no business case. We still have
It's business case driven.
Yes.
How are your dollars for?
I would completely agree. It's business case driven. We're looking more for how do we save costs than how we're driving revenue. There is the goal to drive revenue into an organization, but not from a generative AI standpoint. You don't want to. Google does enough to work for us, telling everyone they have cancer and coming in. I don't know if you've ever searched it from that perspective. But really, we're looking at like how can we actually save money, what tasks we can take out. Call centers are a great area that we're looking at from a perspective of generative AI. It's connecting a couple different pieces to that. But if we're not showing a return on investment from a cost savings perspective, that project never gets off the ground. The other piece that we're really looking at is make versus buy. And especially in healthcare, there's a lot of areas where we really don't want to make it, because if we're wrong and it messes up a bunch of patients, we'd rather that risk be on somebody who's doing it on a much larger patient population.
So it's business case driven. So 2 for business case. Anything else?
So different organizations, what we are seeing are doing it differently. Of course, business case driven mostly, but the way they are identifying the business case, which business case to focus on. There are some organizations who are focusing on maybe use cases or business cases which maybe peers or competitors are working on. There is a lot of studies, there are a lot of interest about what others are doing. All the analysts, they are also publishing industry-specific use cases. That is one. Second thing is sometimes it will be more like, what are the most interesting problems? And I'm not making it up. I've actually seen cases where before doing a POC or pilot, no proper research was done in terms of what would be when we productionize it, would it make commercial sense? Third, many organizations where they're trying to come up with some quantifiable model where they are saying that what are the benefits, cost involved. Cost would include your cloud services, the cost of implementing all of that, people cost which would you incur even after that, and they try to add up a risk element beyond that, the compliance, because the cost of a non-compliance. Now quantifying that is a big challenge. If you end up being on the wrong side of the regulation, and then say you do that, you save money for 5 years, and then you are non-compliant in the 5th year, and then you have to pay a penalty, and you add that. So what is the probability of that happening? So I have seen that, in fact, we are working with some clients where we are trying to come up with a quantifiable model, and we say that where the benefit significantly outweighs cost plus risk, to go ahead with that. But I would say even in those, we are taking a huge leap of faith and assumptions, because a lot of variables are still not clear.
Totally. I think that's the unknown, right? That's the biggest part of the unknown we have in this. So I'll shift the gear a little bit. I'll ask you a slightly different question than the regular one. So I'll say now the business cases, sure, all of us are reeking business cases, right? Like it's been our way of mantra. So now, how do you evaluate a generative AI business case slightly different than any other business case you have? And how do you look at the risk aspect of it?
So I think that is very, very important. Generative AI comes with its own risks, right? Related to data management, related to biases, discrimination. How do you bring in an element of explainability, being able to monitor the solution, the traceability, the observability? I think all those things. But right now, I think generative AI mostly is still in its infancy. The scaled use cases, scale productionization of the use cases is yet to come. But I think the way organizations are thinking about it, or the way we are helping our clients think about it, is to think of a really mature LLM ops platform, or think of if there are going to be too many applications of generative AI in your business, then maybe you can think of an enterprise-grade generative AI platform, which is centrally managed on top of your existing data platform. And you are creating these specific capability components, whether provisioning of the LLMs, foundational or your open source ones, You have some pre-built ML models running in there. There are other AI applications which are provided as a capability to business users, whether you're looking at text, you're looking visuals or observability, whatever capabilities you want as a horizontal. And then you expose these in a very secure, safe manner to your business stakeholders to self-serve themselves, no matter what the use case is. In the process, you also think about the AI literacy, because like Chetan mentioned, LLM may not be the answer to all types of problems. Sometimes your small language models or simple NLP applications or machine learning models can solve that use case. So how do you ensure that while you are embarking on this journey, thinking about the future, looking at creating either more revenue streams or saving costs, bringing in more efficiency, I think it's very, very important for you to think from not only from a technology and architectural standpoint, but also how do you govern, how do you train your people, ensuring it's a win-win for everybody.
You are telling me LLM can't do everything? Wow. Yeah, it seems that seems to be the blind spot.
Just ask it if it is who is gonna win Premier League.
It'll tell you
It won't tell
something.
you.
It'll tell you something. The question is are those the blind spots you're looking at as well? What are the blind spots you have uncovered? Tell us something that people might say, oh yeah, this looks like a blind spot.
Yeah, I think one of the obvious ones is when you share the data, are you compromising any laws like HIPAA compliance or GDPR compliance? Most of these models are being delivered through cloud, right? And they will sign any agreement that you want. And later you discover underneath the architecture that, oh, this data is feeding into some model that is also getting my competitors' data. And that's when there is a red flag that, why should I share my data to train a model that can be used by my competition as well, right? So I think this is extremely important for us to ensure we evaluate the architecture and the deployment options and the data compliance aspect into this. The second, I would say, is data quality, right? It is garbage in, garbage out, or if you have really high quality data, then you will get good answers. So I think those are the two important.
Is the garbage can now smaller or larger because the models are pre-trained?
Yeah. Well, it depends. Several organizations have, including us, right? We have invested in data quality management and data governance, but even a small percentage of poor data quality can impact you a lot, right? Hence, all these models are really moving towards 90%, 99%, or even 100% accuracy. I haven't seen anyone claiming 100%, right? But at least these claims are as good as the data that is fed into these models, right? So just think about if the data is not adequate that is feeding the model, the answers would be based on the limited set that the model has. So that's another point.
Great points there. Yours.
So from a data quality perspective, I will say healthcare probably has the dirtiest data that you can look at. We have all the HIPAA issues that come through. Those are big blind spots for us. But when we're looking at buying a model from somebody else, the real question is, what did you train on? How did you train it? And by the way, was your data set big enough? Because what works on a white male who's 45 does not necessarily work on a black female who's 32. And all those pieces in the background, when you try and put that information together and say, well, what was your population trained on? A lot of the people who have trained these models don't actually know because a HIPAA has 26 elements you need to strip out, which by the way is date, race, age, all these other things. They can't even tell you what they trained their data on. That's a huge blind spot for us in the industry. The other piece that I would say is generative AI by definition is great at summarizing things. And we looked at it from summarizing charts perspective, because if you have a 80-page chart, your doctor has 10 minutes to kind of review it before he walks in the door. He's not reading, or she is not reading 80 pages worth of information. But when you summarize things, you omit things by definition. So there is an inherent risk there that is a blind spot for us in the industry, and we're still working through those ramifications.
Second blind spot alert, actually. So many of these pre-trained models, they don't even tell us what data they're trained on. So, and that's even Meta, who released their entire open source. They don't tell us what data they have trained on. They haven't made data open source. They have made the code and the model open source. Your thoughts on the blind spots?
So pretty much aligned, three big blind spots are cost, data quality, and regulatory challenges. Cost when you start doing something, but by the time you have to productionize, and that comes as a surprise, and that may outweigh the benefits, and sometimes you may have to kind of leave that, and you'll be in for a surprise, and all your efforts and time would be going waste. Second would be around data quality, so which has been harped, and something related to what Michael said. I was talking to a CDO yesterday, and he said that if you leave it to AI model, the AI model would never predict a female to be a US president because there is no precedence. Okay, so that means it's always trained on what is there, and you would see those challenges coming up in various fields. So that was said in a light-hearted manner, but if you see, this is really the truth. The models are skewed and biased. If it's trained on the skewed data, biased data, and in fact it would amplify the biasness. Second, last, of course, regulatory challenges which would come as big surprises, and you don't want to be in that territory. So organizations should, or partners should enable them to figure out.
Third blind spot alert there. So amplification of bias. It divides what is divided more, like our country right now. So your thoughts on blind spot?
What I'll suggest is when you are implementing these solutions, even before you have started building these solutions, you need to think of a validation framework, the critical KPIs based on which you're going to monitor the performance of the generative AI solution. You need to be able to check on the accuracy, you need to be able to check on the context, performance biases, just like I was saying earlier. It is very, very important for you to define those set of KPIs in line with the use case, and then be able to implement that monitoring framework on an ongoing basis so that you are able to see or capture if there are any lapses in the performance or as well as on the data side of things. We always advise our clients to think about this even before we have started building the solutions, and it has worked very well. And a lot of other organizations where they are experimenting, trying to innovate, they are not paying attention to this. So I think this is something very important to be thought about before you have started implementing the use case.
Excellent. Think before you leave. Okay, great. So let me think before you do. Okay, so let me reverse the order here just to get some excitement with this. So what are those, how do you future-proof your AI investments right now? With this risk, with these blind spots, etc. Now we are getting into a faster pace. We are driving a faster vehicle, and they are full of blind spots. How do you future?
Yeah. So again, as I said earlier, right, it's very important for you to think of your think of an enterprise generative AI strategy. You need to have that centralized platform capability. You need to really educate your people. You need to create the AI literacy, and your architecture should align to incorporate any changes in the future. Today you might be doing all internal facing generative AI use cases. Tomorrow you might do some external facing. Technology is evolving at a fast pace. There could be certain exigencies, certain gaps that may exist. So thinking about all of that, and I think generally the platform teams, the data platform teams, we are seeing clients really creating a generative AI as a group itself under the leadership of data. So thinking of it from a centrally managed capability standpoint with the enablement given to the business users to build that solution, but still you are enforcing the standards, you are enforcing the policies and the security mechanisms, etc., will ensure to a certain extent, because nobody has seen the future, but that'll help you really future-proof your investments.
Okay, I understand that as centralized you are thinking and execute federatedly. right? Okay, excellent. So you
Yeah, so that is a very important point where you know build a governance structure within the organization, build a centralized team, maybe a chief generative AI officer kind of a thing would come up. So one thing where we say that Gen AI would be taking up a lot of jobs, but some jobs are definitely getting created. Other than that, mostly as we talked about, we move from use case to data. My take would be we should be moving from data to use case. Identify uh, the most credible set of data within the organization. Start from that. And third is from a future proofing perspective, create a team which is interdisciplinary team where you bring in the legal framework also within that. You'll have to train people. Even the compliances are evolving. We are talking about things like intellectual property rights. Now, the current laws and the current governance, that is, those are not taking care and they are not very clear, so you don't know. And those laws are also evolving. Technology actually has evolved faster than these laws, and laws are catching up with that. So, yeah, we need to create awareness, and the teams need to be sensitized about those. And yeah.
create a central governance structure and make sure it works with a cross-functional team. Your thoughts? Healthcare is super sensitive about these things, so
So I would say two things. One is, first, we actually added new documentation, one more sheet that you fill out when you hit our emergency department and others, asking permission to use your data this way. Because even though we're de-identifying it, we don't have to ask permission, we know the laws are gonna get there. So we're future-proofing it by making certain we're asking that question ahead of time. The second side of that, and I completely agree with the governance and other piece, is when you're picking the projects that you're working on, you really need to make certain you're getting an ROI out of those models. That will set you up to be able to move forward with any of your next projects much faster than if you have a bunch of failures out there. Don't get me wrong, I know the model is fail fast, but there's no cheat when it comes to generative AI, unfortunately. So make certain when you're picking your models, you build a good base, because those models will be what you're building on for your next step, and don't try and set the world on fire straight off the top. So.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree on the governance, the legal aspects. I would say, prioritize 2 or 3 areas based on your business needs, right? The technology is too fancy, and you can just keep get trapped into the technology, right? And burn dollars and time and money. But if you just focus on 2-3 areas that will add value to the business, so prioritize those. That's definitely one thing that I would suggest. Second is, maybe create a framework just around the governance itself, right? Unintended consequences, right? The bias. So what are these? Try to learn about those. You just hear these words, but how those are applicable in your scenario. Document those ahead of time than dealing with surprises later on.
excellent. ChatGPT, governance and risk. There's your recipe, right? And focus maybe, right? So let's give it to audience. Like you might have questions about this. You might have had your own blind spots. Share some experiences with us.
Hi everyone, my name is Paul McSharma. I am the North America CDO for Helion. We sell Sensodyne, Advil, and all other brands. Really good discussion. I actually have a question. I love when the conversation starts with the car analogy, by the way, that's really, really good. Michael, question for you. We are at a cusp of a similar situation where we are in the middle of consumer and patient care, and we are talking about blind spots here. How do you invest in Gen AI when you know that HIPAA, FDA, and all these guys will have a huge say in this going forward? You do invest $1 million, and 6 months down the road, few states, or at a federal level, some executive order comes out. What do you do with that data? And specifically, for example, if I walk into a doctor's office and they say, is it okay to record my voice? What are the chances that my voice will not be used for some malicious purposes in the future? So how do you manage those blind spots which you're not even aware of yet? Thank you.
Part of it is where I mentioned that documentation we're having people sign. but also any of the doctors that are doing the ambient listening side, they ask permission saying, hey, I'm using this product, this is what it does. We set up the front end with set speeches so they know what to ask people. The other piece is we try not to go in any area that we think has too much risk. And when you think about listening devices, everybody has an Amazon Echo or something in their room. They've gotten very comfortable with that. Their Siri's always listening to you. Hopefully I didn't set anybody's phone off. But we really look at what people have become comfortable with. And I will say they weren't as comfortable as we thought, because when we put out this documentation, 35% of the people that we asked, hey, can we use it? They said no. And that's their right, and that's important. But it's one of those things where I was asking around, and that varies across the country. We're mainly in North Texas, even though we're 30 hospitals and about $6 billion. Different hospital in California that was doing the same documentation, they only had a 10% people saying no. So it also varies by geographic what people will want. And the best way to do this to me is ask your customer, and don't put it in. Every one of us have went through and said, okay, please agree to this 37-page document just so you can get your update on your phone. Don't do it on that. Make certain it's something separate, because otherwise I'm sure that will come back on us.
If I can open on that a little bit, what's worse, doing something and have regulation stop it, or not doing something and let competitor win?
True, but the competitor will have the same exact parameters based on those regulations as well, right? So the risk is really for you to take or not take, right? Do you want to be risk averse or do you want to be risk aggressive? That's where a lot of people are today.
Thanks, Bob. Any other questions?
I would say healthcare is extremely risk averse.
I would concur with that, yes.
I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah. Okay, the garbage in, garbage out problem, dirty data. Have you found any functionality in AI to help you go the other direction and actually find the root cause of dirty data? You know, you get the dirt in the AI, it produces inaccurate results, obviously. But is there any functionality that you've identified to work the other direction in data validation using AI?
Can we take an analogy here? So what happened is we have a lot of logs that come out, system logs. It was only used when there was a big problem to solve, like somebody manually reads it. If you continuously convert that into structured data, semi-structured to structured, it kind of opens up your eyes on where things are going on. It will not do the RCA for you, not at least now, but it can make the RCA process much more repeatable and much more faster. Any other?
Actually, there is a data observability feature. There are few tools that are already in the market we are using. So it identify and predict what is the sequence of your historical data, and if any anomalies are detected, it will notify to your channels, like it can be Slack or email. So it notifies to the right people so that you can identify the root cause for this anomaly, and you can tag to your pipeline.
Yes, observability is a great solution. I think you should explore that. And there are various other ways as well. With generative AI coming in, you can have agents monitoring that, capturing the anomalies, being able to alert. How much of the RCA is possible, to what level, I think we'll have to still see. But if you have a data governance organization, data stewardships, your catalogs and the rules are well defined, then getting to root cause will not be as difficult.
And as part of the data governance, there is a data lineage process to identify the column level lineage so that you can tag back to the root cause.
I would say it's also very dependent on what you're trying to do, because those tools are great and we use those tools, but then there will be things in your data that's also tied to biases that you may not show up. So like, this is going to sound strange, but it's been proven. If you're male and your doctor's female, you don't say everything. Or if you're female and your doctor's male, you don't say everything. Same thing when it comes to race. And those omissions actually create holes in your data that you can't find through an observability tool. So you have to think through each problem of what you're doing a little bit more deeper than what you may have done in the past.
Great panel. I think we are an exciting panel, but we are not the only panel. So,